It's so good to see all your smiling faces today as we're getting ready to learn primary structure and style. My name is Linda McCotis. I am the lead implementation coach with IEW, and I love this training. This is, actually I shouldn't say this, but it is my favorite training that I give. I so enjoy working with kindergarten, first and second grade teachers and sharing with you the possibilities for teaching writing to your young students. I've heard many times teachers say, wow, finally someone understands our students. Finally someone gets what we're trying to do. And so I'm here now to share with you what you can do with your students too. I am probably, though, the least likely writing teacher you will ever meet in your life. I never learned how to write in school. I never learned how to teach writing for my elementary ed degree. I never learned how to remediate writing for my special ed degree, yet somehow I was supposed to be able to do both. Have any of you had a methods class on how to teach writing specifically? No? Well, consider this your methods class, right? Here it is today and tomorrow. So I went to college and I had my first paper due, and my roommate said, Linda, I can't stand to listen to you type. Do you mind if I type that for you? I worked as my church secretary. I can get this done in 15 minutes. I said, go right ahead. So she started typing my paper and she said, Linda, you are a terrible writer. I said, I know. I never learned how to write in school. And I really don't know what to do. And she said, do you mind if I edit this while I type? Because I can't type it as it's written. I said, go right ahead. Now, she was my roommate for 4 years. Isn't that great? Never had to pay an editor, never had to pay anyone to type my papers, right? This is before computers. She used an electric typewriter, which was my going away gift to college from my parents. And then, time goes on, and I had a paper due. This was the summer before my senior year now. And she had the nerve to go on choir tour to Europe. And I had a paper due. And I went, oh no, what am I going to do? Well, I was bemoaning this fact to my boyfriend, who's now my husband of 36 years. And he said, oh, don't worry, Linda, I'm a good typist. Notice I didn't tell him I couldn't write. I told him I couldn't type. So he started typing my paper, and he said, you are a terrible writer. I said, I know, I never learned how to write in school. And he said, do you mind if I edit this while I type, because I can't type it as it's written? I said, go ahead. So then I married that enabler. So now would have someone in my life forever, to help me with editing and typing. So time goes on, and I taught in the inner city of Chicago, and I worked with kindergarten through 8th graders. And do you think for special needs students, that's who I worked with, do you think that special needs students are very good writers automatically? No. So can you imagine, I wish I knew then what I know now, right? But that wasn't the case. So every time I went to a conference, I went to the writing booth. I went to every workshop on writing that I possibly could, always hoping I had the magic bullet, right? Always hoping, but I never did. I'd go back, I would try, what I learned, and it didn't work. So I just figured, well, it isn't for my students in my classroom, in my environment. So then time goes on, and we decide to homeschool, and we had 2 children at the time. My son was entering kindergarten and our daughter 2nd grade, the year we started homeschooling. The apple does not fall far from the tree. So every time we did writing, my 2nd grader cried. And I went, oh, now what? Why couldn't she be like that tree? Why this tree? And so my husband came to me in April of that school year, and he said, I'm going to tell you right now, Linda, our kids are not going to grow up to be like you. They're going to grow up to be like me. They have to know how to write. It's a life skill. In the meantime, I had gone back to the school where our daughter had attended. I was friends with the teachers there. I had actually taught in that school. And I asked the 2nd grade teacher, what do you do for writing? And she gave me these. She gave me stars with lines on them and hearts with lines on them and trees, Christmas trees, with lines on them. She gave me shamrocks with lines on them. Every holiday had a shape with lines on it. And I thought, wow, someone else doesn't know how to teach writing either. I'm not alone in this. It was almost reassuring, but sad at the same time. So I went back home with these lovely shapes and colors and lines, and she was happy because guess what? She grew up to have an art degree. So she loved all the little shapes and colors. But did it teach her writing? No, it didn't. So it appeased her, but it didn't strengthen her education in any way, shape, or form. Well, my husband later came to me after that April, and when he said, when he had said to me that our kids are going to grow up to be like me and not like you, I said to him, as the principal in this school, it is your responsibility to find an alternative because I've tried. And for 10 years, I've gone to workshop after workshop, conference after conference, and nothing works. So you need to figure it out. And he said, okay, I will. And I thought, yeah, right. You're an engineer. What do you know about education and academics? Well, as it just so happened, a couple months later, a flyer came in the mail from the Institute for Excellence in Writing. How I got on the mailing list, I have no idea. And my husband got the mail. It came on a Saturday. I would have thrown the paper in the recycling bin. And he said, hey, Linda, this writing workshop is coming to our area, and we're going to go. And he said, I'm going to register us both. And I said, when is it? It was the Saturday before school started. And I went, I don't have time for this. This is the Saturday before school starts. He said, you don't have time not to. And I told you I would find an alternative, and I have. And I'm going to go with you because I know you're intimidated by writing. So we went, and I went under duress, really. But within 30 minutes, I knew my life was going to change. I knew I was finally going to learn how to write. I knew my children were going to learn how to write. And I knew every student I had thereon after was finally going to learn how to write. Well, let me give you a little history of IEW. Mrs. Anna Ingham is the founder, original founder of the IEW methodology. She is from northern Alberta in Canada. She started teaching in the mid-1930s. She had a multilingual, multi-grade classroom, grades 1 through 10 actually, and a one-room schoolhouse. She had to figure out how to meet their needs individually, yet teach them corporately. Has anything changed? No. That's still what we have to do today, but she had grades 1 through 10. I could not even imagine it. Then from there, she actually went into first grade and stayed there for the rest of her career. And in first grade, that's when she started the IEW methodology. Many people believe that IEW is started with the higher grades and was brought down to the primary grades, but that isn't true. It started in the primary grades and went up. So we're not taking something and redoing it and fixing it for you. We're giving it to you the way that it was born, right? The way that it was intended to be. Mrs. Ingham wrote a book. It's entitled The Blended Sound Sight Program of Learning. This is the foundation and the entire program that Mrs. Ingham created. So if you'd like to look at this during a break, you may. I will have it up here for you to look at later. Mrs. Ingham has a nephew, Dr. James Webster. Dr. Webster became a teacher in the mid-1940s. He went home that first Thanksgiving and he said, why is it that your first graders write better than my third graders? He too was in a one-room schoolhouse, grades 1 through 10. He too had a multilingual classroom, but his students spoke different languages. Her students were the Native Canadian Indian languages. They'd call them the First Nations languages, as well as they spoke French, and she had to teach in English. And there were some English-speaking students as well. In Dr. Webster's class, it was the mid-1940s. He had a lot of Eastern European immigrants in his classroom. So this methodology was born in our classrooms today. They're very much multilingual all over the United States, right? And so that's why this works in a classroom of students of any language, right? trying to learn English and trying to improve their English speaking, listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills. Well, Dr. Webster wanted to know how she wrote better, how her students wrote better than his, and so she shared with him the foundation of the method, our earlier units. He went back to his class. He went ahead and started teaching it, and over time grew this all the way up to the university level. In fact, it took him 40 years. He worked on this for 40 years. Can you imagine that? 40 years. So now you have the benefit of all of his work and labor and how they put it all together for you and for me, and how it transformed, how it will transform your classrooms. Andrew Pudewa is our director. He started the Institute for Excellence in Writing. He learned from the Canadians. He kept going back summer after summer after summer, and they said, well, if you're going to keep coming back, we're going to mentor you. So they did, and he started teaching for them in the summer camps. He came back to the United States, was working in a middle school classroom, was also working with his own children, and learned there really is something to this. And over time, he and the Canadians worked together, and the Institute for Excellence in Writing was born. So Mrs. Ingham, her program builds on the strengths of both whole language as well as phonics. Both have their benefits. So she took their strengths and put them all together and created her program. So you will find that throughout the entire couple of days that we're working, throughout all of the units that your students will learn. And she taught the structure and style methodology at the readiness level, which is where all your students are. And the other thing that she did is she built inherent grammar. Now, inherent grammar is the grammar that students have inherited from their environment, or what they know inherently from their environment. And some students come to class what we like to call as linguistically rich. They've been read to a lot, they have an incredible vocabulary, they speak in very long sentences, and they're amazing, little readers in your class. Then you have the students who come to your class a little less rich, right? Maybe not read to quite as much, maybe somewhat. Maybe English was not the first language in their classroom. Maybe they came from an environment where they spoke a different language. So your job is to take your students wherever they are and grow them up, right? And we do that through building that inherent grammar and pouring a lot of language into them. And we do that through poetry memorization. So it's through poetry that the students are then allowed to expand that vocabulary at a rate that you just won't believe. It's pretty amazing what you can see. So you have on your desks some materials, and the first thing that I want you to take a look at is the yellow binder. That one, the yellow binder, is your classroom supplement and lesson plans. So that is your teacher material. You also have an additional binder that's your student writing portfolio. Those are your student blackline masters, okay? Then you have posters. We have posters with our method. I have a few of them up here for you. And then you have a red folder, and you have one of those at your desk. You don't need to take it out of its envelope or anything yet, but that's called the Tools for Young Writers folder, and we're going to be going through that a little bit later today. And then the most important book you have on your desk is our blue seminar workbook. It says Teaching Writing Structure and Style on the cover. We use that binder to teach teachers of all grade levels. It does not matter which grade level you teach, and that's where we're going to spend our some of our time, and then we're going to spend some of our time in the yellow one. At your seat, you have a card that looks like this one. It's called the Premium Membership Card, and you can go ahead and take that out, and please place that in the front pocket of your blue seminar workbook. Okay? The Premium Membership Card is our gift to you, and it has a passcode at the top right. And when you activate this passcode, you will have access to many gifts. You'll have all kinds of talks on teaching writing that our director, Andrew Pudewa, gives. We also have other tools there that you can download and print for your use. And you also have access to our training that Andrew Pudewa, our director, has recorded called Teaching Writing Structure and Style. So if you need to review anything, you'll have access to that. but you will also have access to this training as well and its recording. Okay? All right. So in your blue seminar workbook, we're going to start there. You can go ahead and turn to page 7. We have 9 units that we teach, but we do not teach all 9 to your grade levels. We teach those that are in red. And in kindergarten, we do not teach Unit 4, nor do we teach Unit 7. So in kindergarten, it's 1, 2, 3, and 5, but in first and second grade, it's all those that are in red. And before we jump into Units 1 and 2, at the very beginning, we actually start with pre-writing. And pre-writing to IEW is not merely penmanship. It's what I expressed before, building that inherent grammar and putting a lot of language in the brain so we can get a lot of language out of the brain, right? The younger they are, the truer that is, right? The younger they are, the less they have in their brain. So it's our responsibility to put it in. So that's where we're going to be spending a lot of our time, is right there, this morning in particular. And then we have note making and outlines. That's where we create what we call a keyword outline. So our students have a small passage, a short passage of 5 sentences or so, and you read through the passage and choose the key words from each sentence to create what we call our keyword outline. From there, we retell that outline verbally before we ever write anything. And in kindergarten, the teacher actually writes it on the board while the students give you oral answers. They're not expected to write that at the beginning of the year in particular. Then Unit 2 is where you actually write that paragraph, and the teacher for kindergarten writes it on the board from sentences the students give you verbally. But in first and second grades, they actually do write their own keyword outline and write their own paragraphs. And then in Unit 3, that's our narrative story writing. And that's where our students have a narrative story, a short story, and they will turn it into 3 paragraphs thinking about the key ideas of the narrative: characters and setting, conflict, climax, and resolution. So those 3 sections. Then you'll notice that on my slide actually, and on your handout, there are arrows that go back and forth. I like to call that the corpus callosum that runs down the middle of your brain, because we're going to go from the right side of the brain where we have retelling narrative stories, and Unit 5, Unit 7, Unit 9, that column is a lot of brain-based writing. The other side is our fact or report-based writing. So that's more the left side of the brain. So we have that fact-based or source-based, and then we have the brain-based or the opinion-based writing. And we need to do that and go back and forth across all those units, because as students get older, they need to learn how to write essays. And when you write an essay, you have to be able to research the facts plus tell what you think about them. And so that's exactly what we do as we go across that corpus callosum down the middle of the brain and go back and forth with those units. So we go over to the right side, now we'll go to the left side. So Unit 4 is summarizing a reference. That's where your students are going to learn how to take a long paragraph of 10 or 12 sentences, choose a topic, select the facts that support that topic, and end well with what we call a clincher. Then Unit 5 is writing from pictures. So now we're going back to that brain-based side. Now there are no words, there are only pictures. So the first time, for the very first time, your students are now going to be writing without a text, right? So all the words come from their brain, thus the brain-based writing, right? So that's Unit 5. Then we go down to Unit 7, and Unit 7 is inventive writing. And inventive writing, your students are able to tell you about their favorite toy, write about their best friend, write about a class field trip, unique experiences. So they're able to write about whatever it is that they want to write about. And that's where most writing curricula begins, right? Tell me about your summer vacation kind of idea, which is what I grew up with. But that is not what we do. We do that last because we want to teach our students how to write first before we also expect them to be creative too and come up with all that information out of their head. So we separate the skill from having to come up with information to learning how to write. And we want to focus on the learning how to write aspect first. And there is creativity and voice building and all of that throughout the method embedded throughout. Then if you'll turn to the back of your seminar workbook, behind the Stylistic Techniques tab, and you will find on page 171 the stylistic techniques list. And 171 we have 5 different sections. The first section we have are for dress-ups, and we want our students to dress up their writing. We want it to sound professional, right? Polished, and not like conversational English. And we work on that through your poetry too. And let's take a look at this here. You'll see that the dress-ups in red we teach to all of your students. In kindergarten, first and second grades, they learn all of the dress-ups. And in first and second grade, it's optional, but they may also learn how to start their sentences with something other than the subject. They can start with a preposition, an adverb, or have a very short sentence. So I'll teach those to you too. We also teach you 3 of our decorations. Those are literary devices. The first being an alliteration. We also teach them how to ask a question and how to identify and use a simile. And we teach all of these through our poetry initially, and then they may transition into their writing as well. Okay, so now let's go ahead and turn to the front of the seminar workbook. And we're going to take a look at an excerpt from Benjamin Franklin. Turn to page 8, please. So initially I told you that our methodology was founded in the 1930s. It's actually a lot older than that. Okay, so let me read this to you. 3 or 4 letters of aside had passed when my father happened to find my papers and read them. Without entering into the discussion, he took occasion to talk to me about the manner of my writing. Observe that, though I had the advantage of my antagonist in correct spelling and pointing, which I owed to the printing house, I fell far short in elegance of expression, in method, and in perspicuity, of which he convinced me by several instances. I saw the justice of his remark, and thence grew more attentive to the manner in writing, and determined to endeavor at improvement. Now, isn't that what you want for your students too? Don't you want them to be determined at the endeavor of improvement? Of course you do. And to me, that's an attitude change. So when students want to write, when they want to improve their writing, I like to think of it as a switch that flipped. So suddenly, this is fun. Suddenly, I want to do this. And that's what happened to me. About this time, I met with an odd volume of The Spectator. It was the 3rd. I had never before seen any of them. I bought it, read it over and over, and was much delighted with it. I thought the writing excellent, and wished, if possible, to imitate it. With this view, I took some of the papers, and making short hints of the sentiment in each sentence, laid them by a few days, and then, without looking at the book, tried to complete the papers again, by expressing each hinted sentiment at length and as fully as it had been expressed before in any suitable words that should come to hand. Well, let's unpack that a little bit. The 3rd sentence to the right, 3rd line, I should say, to the right, it said he wished, if possible, to imitate it. And that's exactly what we do too. We are an imitation-based methodology. We go from imitation to innovation. And that's what Benjamin Franklin discovered too, is if he learns to imitate good writing, he can then learn to put that in his own words. Then the next line in the middle, it said he used short hints. He took short hints of the sentiment in each sentence. So what did he do? He created a keyword outline, by golly. He took those key words and put them in an outline format for himself. And that's exactly what we do too. And then what did he do? The next line to the right is he tried to complete those papers again, but the last line says how he did it, with any suitable words that should come to hand. So he put it back together again with his own words, with his own ideas, and making it his own. And that's exactly what we do in units 1 and 2 and following. Then I compared my Spectator with the original, discovered some of my faults, and corrected them, but I found I wanted a stock of words or readiness in recollecting and using them, which I thought I should have acquired before that time if I had gone on making verses, since the continual occasion for words of the same import but of different length to suit the measure, or of different sound for the rhyme, would have laid me under a constant necessity of searching for variety, and also have tended to fix that variety in my mind and make me master of it. Well, what is the important thing in this paragraph? 2nd line in the middle. What did he need? A stock of words. And at the end, why did he need a stock of words? Variety, variety. So what did he really need? Roget's thesaurus. But it didn't exist until 1852. So many years later, nearly 100 years later, we finally edited the source, but he created his own, and we do too. And we actually put it on the wall so that your students have those words at the ready, developing a linguistically rich classroom. Therefore, I took some of the tales and turned them into verse, and after a time, when I pretty well forgotten the prose, turned them back again. I also sometimes jumbled my collections of hints into confusion, and after some weeks endeavored to reduce them into the best order, before I began to form the full sentences and complete the paper. This was to teach me method in the arrangement of thoughts. By comparing my work afterwards with the original, I discovered many faults and amended them. But I sometimes had the pleasure of fancying that in certain particulars of small import, I had been lucky enough to improve the method or the language, and this encouraged me to think I might possibly in time come to be a tolerable English writer, of which I was extremely ambitious. So, did he become a tolerable English writer? Of course he did. So the method must work, right? So let's unpack this paragraph. To the right on the second line, it says what he did. He jumbled up his hints into confusion. Then the next line to the right says he reduced them into the best order. So what did this teach him? The next line says method in the arrangement of thought is what it taught him. So the previous paragraph talked about style, right? The first paragraph, or this paragraph, the last one, talked about structure. So what is the name of our methodology? Teaching writing, structure, and style. Isn't that something? And so here it was in Benjamin Franklin's autobiography all along, right? Okay, so then the next line says he discovered faults and he amended them, and then sometimes he had the pleasure of fancying in certain particulars of small import that he liked his better than the original. And that's exactly what happens to your students. And as soon as they like theirs better, as soon as they think they can do it, what happens? Same thing that happened to Benjamin Franklin. Genuine satisfaction. Maybe I'll become a tolerable English writer. And then he even said he was extremely ambitious. That's internal motivation, is it not? And isn't that what we want from your students too? To grow internally. I can do this. I can do this.